So Alex, what are the main differences between the newly released Submariner Cermit versus the old Rolex Submariner Hulk? Hey guys, and welcome back to today's video, where we are going to have a closer look of two absolute icons from Rolex. Obviously the newly released Rolex Submariner with the green bezel, and its predecessor, the very famous Rolex Submariner Hulk.
Double green trouble. Yeah, we're lucky to have both here actually, and to be able to compare these bad boys side by side. And well, the 41mm Submariner was released not long time ago, and there has been a lot of talk, and people are going crazy about the size, crazy about the colors, crazy about everything.
Yeah, and we initially did a first video when Rolex broke the news. We didn't have the watches in hand, and now we do, and we can give you our honest opinion and feedback.
Yes.
So Alex, let's start with the very obvious and the big talking point of the newly released green sub, the size.
Yes, 41.
Yep, it was announced as a 41.
Exactly.
Tell me a little bit more about it.
Well, it's more or less actually 40.5.
Yep.
We've been doing some measuring, and well, they have rounded up the number, the decimal, to a nice looking 41mm size.
Yeah.
And the overall differences between the 41mm Submariner and the 40mm Submariner is mainly the case and the lugs and the bracelet. And they also have a new movement in the 41mm, so finally the Submariner got its long overdue upgrade of the movement.
Yeah.
So yeah, let's start with the green color combination.
Yeah, I think here's the thing. You have two iconic things here. First of all, you have the Submariner. It's the hallmark of Rolex. And you have the green color. Rolex makes all type of technologies, all type of patents in their watches, but they still use a cheap plastic green box for their watches. And obviously they're very attached to the green color.
Yeah.
And the green Submariner first was introduced in the anniversary, which was called the Kermit, back in 2003. It was in production for 7 years until 2010. Then we saw the introduction of the Hulk, and the Hulk was in production from 2010 up until this year, 2020. So for a whole decade.
Yeah.
Now with the new Cermit, or whatever you would like to call it.
Starbucks, Kermit, Cermit, yeah, many names.
I don't think the watch community has decided on one specific name, but it is absolutely leaning towards Kermit or Cermit.
Yeah, Cermit. We'll work with Cermit.
We'll work with Cermit. So it was introduced this year, 2020, and maybe Rolex is going to keep this one for
a decade, or 7 years, or 1 year. You never know.
Yeah, you absolutely never know.
Yeah.
So that's a little bit of the history of the green and the Rolex. Alex, let's talk a little bit more about the overall feeling of the new watch.
Sure. Well, at first, as Kara mentioned, when we had our previous video about the novelties, we mainly just talked about the watches from the pictures, and we finally had the chance to get them here in hand and actually feel and see and compare. And well, the differences when you put on the 41mm sub is that you can't really feel the 1mm difference, and it's not even 1mm in difference from the diameter, but the overall lugs, the tapering of the lugs, the width of the lugs, the width of the bracelet, it feels pretty good.
Yeah,
I mean, it's slimmer, it's more nice to have on the wrist. It's not as boxy as the Hulk, and we've mentioned it several times before in our previous videos that we are not super big fans of the maxi case.
Yeah.
So from our point of view, this is a step forward from Rolex,
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And both watches on the wrist, you don't really feel that much of a difference. I would agree with you, Alex, that the proportions of the new Cermit is a little bit nicer to the eye as well. The tanky lugs, the tanky maxi case is a little bit too tanky.
Yeah.
So absolutely love the new proportions, and I was afraid it was going to be way too big at 41 millimeter, but it sits super snug on the wrist, feels comfortable. There's although one thing I would like to comment on, and that is the clasp on the new watch. So in comparison to the old clasp, it's almost 1.5 millimeter bigger, and it looks pretty chunky. And you all know the iconic clasp with the crown. When you see it, it has a specific size, and it's always within that size. So this one is slightly bigger. It's going to be interesting to see how I feel about this in a few years. But at this moment, I prefer the older clasp.
Yeah. But that's one of the reasons, I guess, with the new case size and the slimmer profile, that they widened the bracelet. So from the old Hulk had 20 millimeters lug width, and the bracelet tapering down to 60 millimeters at the clasp. And with the new 41 millimeter Submariner, the Cermit, we have 21 millimeter in lug width and tapering down to 17. So that the rework of the clasp was more or less the result of the new bracelet.
The wider bracelet.
Exactly.
Yeah, absolutely.
So,
absolutely.
But I mean, as you can see when we compare these two, there are bigger visual differences between the two, but the overall feel on the wrist isn't that big, so to say.
Yeah. I'd say very, very small.
Yeah.
All right, and the obvious topic that we really love to discuss is the value of these two watches now after the Hulk has been discontinued and when the new Cermit has been introduced. Obviously, we all know when a new Rolex watch gets introduced, the price always starts way up here.
Yeah.
And there's no difference with the Cermit. When it just got released and it got in the hands of dealers, we're seeing it trading around 32,000 US dollars, which is absolute madness.
What is that? Triple retail?
Well, the more important factor there is it's 5,000 more expensive than the market price of a Daytona.
Yeah,
that's crazier, I think.
Yeah, that's crazy.
But yeah, triple retail when it got introduced, and obviously we are going to see it coming down. We are actually seeing it coming down a little bit. Last numbers I saw, they're lying around 28,000 US dollars. And by the time we post this video, and by the time you see it in a week, it's probably going to be at 25 or even less.
Yeah.
So the Rolex Submariner Hulk, on the other hand, when a popular sports watch gets discontinued, we obviously see a spike in its pricing.
Yeah.
We saw that with the Rolex Batman on the Oyster. The Hulk is taking this to the next level. The Hulk was trading around 16,000.
The hype was building up this year with all the rumors of the discontinuation of the Hulk. So it was going from like
slowly
15,000, and right before, in like end of August, it was trading around what?
18 almost.
18, yeah.
And these prices that we're mentioning, keep in mind, it's not for used pieces, it's for unworn pieces. That's the market that we kind of look at.
Yeah.
So now an unworn 2020 Rolex Submariner Hulk is trading approximately between 21 and 23,000 US dollars. And that's madness. Truly madness.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, I think a lot of these watches are going to be safe queens.
Yeah.
They're going to be held for speculation for in the future, and I think we are going to see the Rolex Submariner Hulk slowly climb like all other discontinued models.
All right, guys. Thank you for tuning in. We hope you liked this review and comparison between the Rolex Submariner Cermit and the Rolex Submariner Hulk. Let us know in the comments which one of these two you prefer, and your thoughts on the new 41mm Submariner. And don't forget to like this video and subscribe to our channel. See you next time.
Thank you.